think I'll quit while I'm ahead. So here we are at the conclusion of the dynamics of arrow making, at least the way I do it. I want to thank everybody for following along, taking the time to give it a thumbs up, and also sharing it with your bestest of buds. Before I get into explaining how and why I elect to tie the feather to the shaft, I just want to backtrack just for a little bit, because this does play into one of the reasons why I tie the feather to the shaft. In part number 2 in the fletching, I talked about using Testor's model glue. I'll tell you right now, it's not the best choice, just simply because it's not really designed to stick to wood. It's designed to help melt plastics, like in plastic models. But I have no problem using this, because all I need is a glue to help hold the feather in place while I tie it. And as you can look at this one, I've got a couple done already. I tie the entire feather to the shaft. Now I do this just simply because I think it's cool, and also over the years that I've been competing, I've seen a lot of fletching fall off of shafts because they're not properly glued down and or they're not properly tied down. And who knows, you might end up with a camp name such as Broken Feather, wink wink. But ultimately it does help keep the feather in place longer, even if the little pieces of thread right here begin to wear out and break. Now I'll show you another trick that I do, and also if you take a look at that, you can see that those arrows, the feathers, have just a little bit of a twist to them. And I know that I mentioned that I like a straight arrow shaft, but if you haven't watched the previous 2 videos and you're just watching this one, when you get these AAE fletching jigs, there's a little trick to them. Even though they fletch straight, if you take what would be the front portion of the feather in this little holding spot right here and press down on that while that glue's drying, it'll put just a little bit of a curvature in those arrows. Just a little trick. So for those that have lost interest in this because they don't like arrow making, well, for you that have watched, you can see that there is a little trick with these to get that little bit of a curvature on your feathers. Okay, so I've got one started already, and one other thing that I do need to mention if you're going to do this, once I get the feather glued in place, you can see the quill right here, and this is what usually cuts your hand if you're using your hand as a rest. If you're not careful, these things will cut you very badly, I know. So what I do in conjunction with tying it down, I'll take a piece of sandpaper and I will sand a bevel just in the front of where the fletching, the quill, begins to meet the shaft. Okay, this isn't done, but I'm just demonstrating what I do. It also, that aids in helping that string come up onto that quill. Okay, I've seen guys tie these down with artificial sinew, and they don't take the time to angle the front of that quill, and when that string starts to slip, then you do find yourself getting cut also. So it's just a precautionary measure that I do to help that string right up on that quill and also help, you know, seal it better to the shaft. Okay, so I've got one started here, and I just want to mention too that whenever I make a set of arrows, I always do something a little bit different that indicates what batch these arrows are made from. Now, in times past, I've showed you before, I go with the yellow floss, and I go all the way up to the base of the nock. I'll start down here, tie it, twist it with all the same color thread, but if you notice right here, I'm going from green to red. So when I look at these arrows, I know that all these arrows belong to the same batch. Okay? And I also color band them, and I just do that with a Sharpie. I'm not really concerned that how pristine or perfect it is. I know there's a lot of guys out there that take pride in how perfect their arrows look, but I just don't care. As long as they're functional, that's all I care about. So let me get the camera repositioned, and I'll show you how I tie these feathers to the shaft. So obviously you can see that this tying jig is something that I made for myself in helping to do this. But one of the things that really aids in this is I have this circular piece of leather here. I've got a hole in the middle, but I have it positioned so that it sets on top of this screw right here. What this does is it puts enough downward pressure so that the shaft doesn't free spin. That aids in particular when you're trying to tie this on, because you don't want this shaft to free spin because it becomes burdensome to try to keep everything straight. Alright, continuing on. Doesn't matter how far in front of the quills you decide to start your wrapping. I go typically 3/4 of an inch from the end of the quill in the forward direction, and I just wrap it tight. To me, it's just more of a decoration. What really serves functionally is getting your string from here to the quill, because that you definitely want to make sure you have tied down very good. And you also want to make sure that as you're tying it down, your wrappings are pretty much even, in particular when you get to the quill. It's not always perfect, but I always want to bear in mind that it's either this quill, whether you shoot left or right-handed, it's either one of these two quills that's going to gouge your hand if you're shooting offhand. Again, I don't typically shoot offhand. I've got 1 or 2 bows that are made that way, but most of the time I shoot with a cut-in shelf, and this becomes a moot point at that time. I'm going to build it up just a little bit and then jump up on top of the quill. And I always try to put a little bit more pressure on the string so that it kind of like really pushes down on that quill to kind of help flatten it out also. Okay, I'm up on the quill, so I'm going to continue wrapping all the way to about where the feathers start. And you can see beneficially why that little piece of leather in the front of this tying jig helps, because if I relax my hand or something, it's not free spinning on me. Now when I get this to the point to where I want to start tying the feather in place, I'll get a little bit of an angle, and it helps to have something flat and thin to spread the feather. And if you hold the string, you can see on the feather where you need to separate it. Now, I'm not very anal about getting these things perfect. If it pulls one of the feather veins down, I don't really care, because that's not going to affect how the arrow truly flies. And I put a little bit of pressure as I'm twisting, because once again, let's see, I don't have it quite right, so I just go back another more of those veins and look at it. If I was going to be truly that anal, I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. It takes a little bit of time, but in the long run, I think this is a much better way of securing your feathers to the shaft, other than just solely relying on the glue. You can kind of see right here how that piece of leather in the front is, I pulled it a little too hard that time, but you can kind of get an idea about having that little round piece of leather in the front. Helps hold this arrow with just a little bit of tension without free spinning all the time. Now, as you start getting to the back, you might want to make them a little bit shallower, because by the time you get to this point right here where there's no feather itself, you want to start winding straight, because you want to also secure the back of the quill as much as you do the front. Now, when I get to that point, move everything just a little forward. Then I have to keep my forefinger here in front of everything and push the vein out of the way so I don't accidentally tie the vein in place. Now, I have the back of this shaft marked right here as to where I want the green thread to stop. Now, you might be asking, what thread do I use? I just go to like a Hobby Lobby or a material shop, and I buy what they call carpet thread. It's really thick and it's really strong, and you can get it in a variety of colors. Okay, so I'm starting to get close to where I want the green thread to end. I'll tie on a little piece of string like this with a loop in it. Well, not tie it on, but I'll slip it up underneath so that when I get close to the end, I have a little loop to put what I cut off through the loop, and then I'll pull it all back underneath and secure it to itself. Alright, I'm close enough. I'm going to take and cut the string. Don't let it go. Make sure you've got it held on to. And then you can take that, hold everything together, hold the string to the shaft, put it through the loop, and then pull the loop, and it goes right back underneath itself, and it's secure. I trim it off. Well, at this point, since I have some quill right there protruding, I'll just take and cut that off. Good enough. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tie on the red string, which indicates, as I mentioned previously, that this batch of arrows comes from the same batch of arrows. What I do next, if I have to tie on a different color string, I'll put a loop in it and just kind of like pull it taut and then wrap it back and forth. I don't know if you guys can see what I'm actually doing there, but when I get it to where I think it's going to stay in place, and it doesn't always, I'll hold it with my finger and then I'll continue wrapping until it locks itself in place. And I always try to keep the loose string forward. Maybe that'll help hold it in place right there. Let me see if I can get it started here. Yeah. And then I'll wrap this all the way to the nocking point. Now I like wrapping right to the base of the nock, and I'll just kind of show you why once I get this through the loop and pulled through. Because when I get done, I'll go ahead and push everything forward and tight, and it actually comes off of that nocking point because I do push everything forward. The same thing with the thread right here. I push it so that it tightens in on itself. So after I get everything tied in place, I just kind of like looking at the feathers themselves. And again, these are secondaries. They're not primary, so they'll, look a little different on the shaft. But once I look at them and everything looks really good to my liking, I'll take some glue, clear glue, and I'll secure the threads, the string, in place. Then I'll run some up the center of the shaft, and there's a reason for that. Then I'll just work that glue because it helps protect the thread, and then I'll wipe the glue in the center of the shaft also. It serves two purposes. It helps keep the thread in place, but also the added glue that's on my fingertip and in the center, I actually push it to the edge of the feather also, so that also helps lock it in place. And I'll usually go 2 coats on the thread that's forward and the thread that's back here, because this is going to get a lot of wear, when you go to pinch it, or if you're going to use a glove. So let me get this accomplished. Alright, so I'm going to get the rest of these done, and then we'll glue on the field points. Alright, I still have 1 arrow that's drying, but I've got 5 ready to go, so it should give us some sort of sense of how they're going to fly. First, I'll be shooting the arrows out of this bow. This is actually the 4th bow I ever built. I don't know how well the camera's picking it up, but there's a date on it, 1998. This is a hickory composite bow. It's got a hickory belly with a hickory back, and as you can see, I've got laminated alternating hickory and black walnut through the handle section. And yes, before anybody says anything, I know I didn't do it right, but that was only my 4th bow. But let's see how this bow, pulling 50 pounds at 27 inches, handles these 5 arrows. I think I'll quit while I'm ahead. Alright, let's go see where they all landed. Well, looky there. They're all in the kill zone. Okay, now I'm going to try shooting these same arrows with the bow that I typically compete with, and that's my 45-pound Ipe bow with a hickory backing. Well, it doesn't look like they're all in the kill zone, but the Mountain Man Rendezvous, it'd be points. Alright, let's go look and see what I did. Well, there you have it. 3 in the kill zone, 2 outside in the Mountain Man Rendezvous. They're all points. And in case anybody is interested, I'm shooting at 15 yards. So I'm going to cut this distance in half and see where the arrows impact. I know at a lot of Mountain Man Rendezvous, there's varying distances with these 3D targets. Some of them are close, some are a little further, but let's just see what I can do by cutting the distance in half. Well, I want to thank you, friends, for joining in on this little adventure, making arrows, at least the way I do it. If you found this series of videos enlightening, I hope you give it a thumbs up and share it with your bestest of buds. And for those of you that are going to be at Cache La Plew, don't let this intimidate you. We're still going to have fun. Bye.